soul persists. The mother soul.
Welcome. This is my Beira's Oil Ground Ignite build. It's got somewhere between 100 and 200k damage. It easily covers as many screens as you need to in long-lasting constant fire damage. It's extremely defensive, probably the most defensive build I've played in PoE 2. The damage is enough to boss. I've killed every boss on it. You still need to play the mechanics because you're not going to instant phase endgame bosses. Arbiter in particular is annoying because it's hard to see where you need to stand with all the fire damage on the ground, and most other endgame bosses can just be face tanked. You have lots of stun threshold, 12k life, and you just get to hold your shield up while they burn. The coverage of the ignited ground is absolutely ridiculous. You can easily cover the entire boss arena or whatever content you're doing. Things like ritual are particularly easy with this. The build isn't particularly cheap. You can probably start it around level 80 with reasonable funding, maybe around 5 divines or something like that. It takes a lot of uniques and a lot of corruption to get the most out of them, and it's not the most expensive build either. Feel free to jump around the video. I'll have a long description section with breakdown of everything that's going on, and I'll also have just random videos of playing. Enjoy.
Hold on. You're mine. Need a moment. Wait! Take this! Hold on. Wait! Wait.
Hey everyone, excited to chat about this build. It's the first time I've ever made a video for Path of Exile 2. I've said this in previous videos, but I just haven't felt like there's enough mechanics, enough variables, enough things to make buildcraft particularly interesting in PoE 2 yet for the sort of things that I like to do. This is the first character in PoE 2 I'm actually kind of pleased with. It's got a lot of different things going on that are a little bit interesting, I suppose. The main thing being that we're dealing most of our damage, or all of our damage really, very little outside of this, with a charm rather than a skill. Now, I saw that I never did this, but it looks like in previous versions back before this was putting ignited ground on the ground, it used to do this burst of damage and was used more widely by people. It looks like it was actually pretty good. It was kind of outside my radar, but they changed that in like 0.2 or something, and it's just been pretty much ignored since by the looks of it, because, well, it's like a 2 meters of burning ground, and that's not very good for doing much. So what we're doing with this build is we're propagating it with in 0.4 we got an easier way than grenades to apply oil to the ground, and so we're utilizing Beiras here to create ignited ground, and then we're spreading it with the Wyvern's oil. And there's a couple things about this. You can see that, you know, we're using Nova, and that the oil is quite large, and I'm not invested into area of effect on the tree for attacks or anything like that. This is just naturally kind of how it is with a few gems, and you don't really need to invest more than this in order to get screen-wide coverage. And as you can see, I played this game in ultra-wide, which is why the ratio that you're looking at looks the way it does. And even in ultra wide, this covers a screen with pretty much a single cast. The ground grows over time, and there's a few things about this that you should know. So I'm going to talk about that before going into it in the video, because it's pretty important. A lot of things about how ground interacts is simply not very well understood by the community. There's a lot of argumentation about this. There's a lot of differing opinions if you go out there and start looking for it, but basically how I believe these ground effects work in tandem with each other is that when you create an oil ground surface and you set it on fire, you either set it on fire by igniting an enemy or creating another burning ground effect near it, you sort of create an ecosystem where there's a bit of competition between the ignited ground effects. And because of this, I don't suggest that for an ignition technique that we use, that you use anything that creates a competing ground, constantly burning ignited ground effect. So you'll see that we actually use cross slash in this build to ignite enemies, and so that there aren't too many competing ignite, because ideally it's only the strongest ignite that should win out, but it doesn't always work that way. And I don't know if it has to do with how oils overlap. You don't want to spam more than you need to with the oils, because once you get all these surfaces interacting with each other, there's some buggy behavior that happens, and if you put too many out there, you'll find that you end up fishing for that ignite instead of just immediately getting it every time. But whereas after I've played with the build quite a bit, I'm pretty good at just not having a problem at all. And as long as you're not using other ignite grounds, there isn't any trouble getting it at all. Another thing that we use in this build, since we do get shocking ground and ignited ground, is tornado. We don't really use it to supplement our damage. We use it because ignited ground doesn't hurt flyers, and there aren't that many flyers in the game. There's just the mosquito guys and then a couple enemies here and there that you can't hit with ignited ground, and so that's when you just tornado them instead. If an enemy is particularly fire resistant, you can throw down a flame wall to help bring that flammability up. We are invested quite a bit in flammability and magnitude. Another thing I want to talk about, and that I didn't realize when I started doing this build, is I assumed that with the way that Beira's Anguish reads, creates ignite ground for 4 seconds when used, ignite enemies as though dealing fire damage equal to 500% of your maximum health. I assumed, based on that verbiage, that you couldn't scale this damage, and I was wrong. Going out there, I noticed that other people said you could, and I noticed that when I got rid of damage on my tree, ignite magnitude, I felt it. And that was odd. And when I felt it, I went out and I started researching, and sure enough, you can scale. You can scale it. The way that I'm scaling it is normal ignite methods will scale the damage. So we've got faster ignites as well as ignite. Where are we? Ignite magnitude. So we just go around and we pick that up. But for this build, a nice thing is that we don't have to worry about a lot of typical things that you have to worry about in builds, because one of the things that will stick out most to you is that we're at about 12,000 life. This is one of the nice things about the build, is that it feels like we're playing Path of Exile 1, and that life doesn't feel bad at all. This is the most defensive build I've played, and we're using Veil of the Night. So we don't have any elemental resistances, but we're stacking the armor applies to elemental damage. And when we're in our human form, that means that we're getting quite a bit of armor resistance to elements here. You can see the numbers there that I'm hovering over. Now, obviously, take that with a grain of salt. Everybody knows that armor doesn't work very well against large hits, and that 10, 20, 30,000 armor isn't the end-all be-all, isn't going to save you from massive hits. But this you will find in this build that you feel pretty darn tanky walking around. This is by far the tankiest build I have played in PoE 2, and it feels good. You really don't have to, you'll see in the gameplay, I don't really have to worry about anything. If you do run into a strong hit, you just immediately bring yourself back into human form. You start regenning health very quickly, because we have percentage health regen through several means that I'll get into. So now with the brief explanation of the basic mechanics of the build, I'll talk a little bit more about. I'll go into the actual individual sections. So first of all, let's talk about skill tree. So we are a ritualist, and the whole reason we're a ritualist is for mind phylacteries, and that allows us to consume 25% of our maximum mana to trigger charms with insufficient charges. So this is how we are triggering Beira's constantly, right? And there's some neat things at work here. Okay, so first of all, 25% of mana is quite a bit. So what are we doing to help against that? Well, first of all, we are enchanting Thicket Warding, and we're enchanting it because you don't want this increased charm effect duration, because charms can't be triggered while charms are active. And so we want to avoid this increased charm effect duration, but we still want that recover 5% of maximum mana when a charm is used. And so instantly we're down to 20% of mana when a charm is used. And then on top of that, we have this nice Heart of the Well here. And every stat on this is important to us. This was cheap though. I got this for a div, not at the about a week or so ago, something like that. So 2% of maximum life on kill, 2% of maximum mana on kill. Those are both very nice for this build. And then on top of that, the most important things are below it though. So 13% chance when a charm is used to use another charm without consuming charges. I'll talk about that in just a bit. And then recover 9% of maximum mana when a charm is used. And so now we are down to 11% of maximum mana when a charm is used instead of 25. But this build also doesn't need a lot of mana for doing things. We turn our attacks, we use life tap in order to use life for those so that we don't need a lot of mana. And then what we do is we take this reduced maximum mana here, 30% reduced maximum mana, and as well as, let's see, where is it? Oh, maximum mana. Reduced maximum mana. Sorry, technical troubles. Give me just a moment. Oh, Well, either I took it off accidentally, or I'm just blind. But basically, we're picking up reduced maximum mana where we are, okay? And the reason why is so that the maximum mana, the mana that we utilize with Mind Phylacteries is minimized as much as possible. And the reason that we want to minimize that, even though it's a percentage basis, is that we have other charms on here. We have a charm that recovers 300 mana when it gets used. So every time this one triggers, we get flat mana back, and every time a charm goes off, it takes percentage mana off. So it takes about 11% of our max mana, which right now I'm sitting at 531, and then we're getting 300 back. And this keeps us pretty well topped off most of the time. It's not the end of the world if we are missing a little bit of mana, because we are running Laviana's Spirits, which is another benefit that we get to do. This is just a constant, like, flat 22 mana per second that tops us off pretty quickly if we ever run low, which is great, and we don't have to manage our mana at all. So that's what we're doing. The other missing part of what I'm talking about is we're using the Speeduborn. This one's corrupted. I would like a more corrupted one, but I have corrupted about 400 of these and not a better belt. But the line that we're interested in here is the 53% reduced charm effect duration. And this comes into play with what I said before. Charms cannot be used while charms are active. And so in order to spam our charms as much as possible, in order to get this life recovery, this mana recovery, and of course our burning ground, we want to reduce the duration of these charms as much as possible. We have less than a 1.5 second duration on the implicit on these charms with that belt. The other thing that we were talking about on this charm, though, is the 13% chance when a charm is used to use another charm without consuming charges. Now, this is important because we come up here. These are non-negotiable. We get another 20% here. So we have 33% or 1 in 3 chance that every time a charm is used that it triggers another charm. This is important. The way the loop on this works is that in order to trigger Beiras whenever we want, we ignite something, and then utilizing self-immolation, we receive that ignite back on us. When we receive that ignite back on us, it has a 1 in 3 chance of triggering one of these other charms, which have a 1 in 3, you get the idea. Another absolutely critical part of this build is that you need to get 100% reduced magnitude of ignite on you, or you're just going to kill yourself, because uh, even though we should be immune to ignite due to this charm, but it bugs it. There are situations where your ignite will still get applied to you. It's a timing issue. It's a server. I haven't put too much effort into discovering exactly how this happens, but basically you want 100% reduced magnitude of ignite. With we take these three here, and then we come down and we take this one here, and for good measure, we also have this one over here. So that gives us our 100% reduced magnitude of ignite on you, and we're clear from dying to our own ignite, because you will notice if you don't have that, you will die instantly all the time. The other nice benefit of being a ritualist is that we get to take that additional ring slot and get that 25% increased bonuses. In order to get a lot of extra life for ourselves. I'll cover that in the equipment part of this build. This is still just going over the tree. But basically, we come down here, we're grabbing a lot of strength, we're grabbing just enough int to use our abilities. We come down, we grab flammability magnitude, we want flammability magnitude and ignite magnitude. We grab those charm, chance to trigger other charms. We have a megalomaniac here specifically for sanguinatic rituals, which gives us 1% of our maximum life regen all the time, which is big. Definitely a big deal when you have 12,000 life. That immediately gets us like 300 life regen. That's great. We come down here, we grab some more flammability magnitude, some ignite speed. That's great. Over here we have immunity to chill, which if anybody, chill is one of the most annoying slows in the game, so that's great. We have immunity to chill. We come down, we get increased attributes because this build does like its strength for that additional life. We come over here for that maximum life. We are grabbing maximum life anywhere we can on the tree. We get a nice 5% here. We come over here. The part that we have to solve on this build, one of the more difficult parts that we have to solve is we want as much armor as possible, and so what we're doing is we're grabbing this node here in order to get additional armor, because we're converting it with iron reflexes. So additional armor from our gloves by taking a +1 to taking armor gloves that then gets turned into evasion, that then gets turned into more armor, basically. Come up here, we get more flammability and magnitude. We come over here, we take this whole wheel of armor applies to elemental damage. We come up here, we get that additional juicy percentage strength. Oh, here's the reduced maximum mana that apparently I was blind to before. So we have 40% reduced maximum mana. We also want to avoid mana on all gear as a result as well. We come up here, it's just some additional armor. This one's nice as well, 150% strength requirements from boots, gloves, and helmets also added to armor. I think this gets us like an extra flat 150, which doesn't sound like a lot, but actually ends up being a decent chunk. We come up here to get this flammability magnitude and these ignite magnitudes. And then this wheel here, of course, gives us a lot more of that percentage of armor applies to elemental damage. And this is non-negotiable. We come up here to get self-immolation, and Molten Being is nice as well, because that 5% of physical damage taken as fire also will help trigger our Ruby Charm, in order, which then has a third 1 in 3 chance to trigger the other 2 charms. So coming back down over here, we grab Behemoth for that extra life. The Area of Effect also helps with our attacks, the AoE on our oil. And then we come down, we grab 3% maximum life here. And it's a little bit of extra stun. We have a massive level of stun threshold, because one of the things you'll see in the gameplay is what I do is I lay down the oil, I ignite it, and then I just go into human form for all my defense, and I put up my shield, and you're practically immortal like that, because you're never going to get, well, outside of very rare instances, you're never going to get stunned outside of it. And then we come over here and we get that just a little bit extra more armor applies to fire damage. The extra points we're going towards a skill effect duration, which isn't very important. So that's the tree. Now, let's talk about the gear. As far as the gear goes, most of these so a couple of them are exchangeable, but let's just get into it. So for the weapon, we're using the guiding palm of the heart. The only upgrade over this would be the scepter that you can get by corrupting these, the chaos version. That one would be nice, but I think that it starts for like 70 div. It is not a cheap upgrade, and this one isn't bad at all for us. It does give us extra damage as extra fire damage, which does apply. People seem to think that extra as damage that successfully applies to ignites does work with Beiras. So we do get a little bit of extra damage off of this for when we are igniting and we're also in human form, which isn't that common. But more importantly is we get a free purity of fire. Now, why does purity of fire matter when we don't have elemental resistances, when our elemental resistances are 0? Well, because currently, and I don't know if this is a bug, I don't know how this works exactly, but purity of fire being free means we can put clarity, vitality, herbalism, and cannibalism on it. And even though they say they have additional spirit reservation, they do not. And our build does not have any spirit because we're running Calm's Heart. And so this is just a nice way of getting all of these additional things. The everything here is pretty nice. 3% of maximum life recovered on kill is huge, and 2% of maximum life all the time is huge. And then the other two are just nice. We have 50% increased life recovery from flasks and 50% increased mana regeneration all the time. So that's a really nice benefit of using this. Now, secondly, it gives us a bit of extra strength, which gets translated to life. It gives us the light radius of all things, which helps counter the reduced light radius from the helmet, which doesn't sound like much, but it's something. And then we get the Meteoric Shrine, which is a nice chunk of additional damage for single target. And it's just cool. It's thematic. It looks nice. Everything about it's kind of cool. Of the weapons, I like this one. Now, the other alternative that I was thinking of that you could do with this build is you could use a scepter that that gives you free skeletons, so that you could use supports on ritual sacrifices. Let me just pull up a skill to show you real quick. So if we go over to the occult and we look at something like Soul Offering, right? Soul Offering. We're not interested in the spell damage. We don't really care about spell damage. But if I engrave this real quickly, and then I equip that, and then I come down here, and we look at what we can support it with, you'll notice that, let's see, what is a good one? What would be a nice one to have on here? Oh, actually, you know what? Now I'm thinking about it. I think it's a lineage skill gem. I'm thinking there's a lineage skill gem that basically makes it for as long as your offering was alive, like that amount of time that it was alive, it gives you 5% of life and mana per second when it dies. And so you could get a massive amount of regen from that pretty much all the time. And you could also trigger the Soul Offering automatically, because a part of this build that we haven't talked about yet is the fact that we are triggering elemental weakness all the time, constantly, automatically, because Bijuborn comes with Cast on Charm use. But anyway, so that was all a long-winded way of talking about the weapon we're using and potential alternatives. For the helmet, we're using Veil of the Night. This, like most of the gear, has been corrupted in order to get a higher percentage on the maximum life. This is by far the most increased maximum life you can get in the game, percentage-wise. The downside, supposedly, being that we have no elemental resistances, but really that just means that we don't have to worry about them. We don't have to invest in trying to get resistance everywhere, which means we can really focus on maxing out our life. So that's obviously why we're using it. Next, we're just using a shield here that has the order of operation of what we're looking for to get on our gear here is life, armor, and if it's an armor piece that is not unique or something like that, then we want to get as high a percentage of that armor applies to elemental damage. Here we have 45%. Now, this was a huge defensive option. This is giving us a huge portion of our armor when we are in human form. Now, alternatives to this, of course, Wrathpith. And this league, we can get a Wrathpith that does not reduce our life when we cast a spell. It doesn't take any percentage off, like this one here. A little bit expensive, you know. I think they hover around 10 div. And I wanted to test this because, you know, this shield gives us, with this much life, gives us over 600% increase spell damage. Wow, 600% sounds big. Well, PoE 2 is messed up. A little bit messed up. I thought this was going to feel pretty good to use. That our Tornado and I tried every other spell. The problem is that really spell damage in PoE 2, you're not getting spell damage if you're not just increasing the level of your spell by a massive amount. And we're too invested in life and other things to really worry about that. And so, yes, this does 10x our spell damage, really. But that's still nowhere near enough. Spells still do not feel great, like a big increase to our damage. And so I don't really recommend using this. All of my testing with it just did not feel very good. So save yourself the 10 div or whatever and don't bother with that. So I recommend a defensive option like this shield, or if you want to do a weird hybrid dual blood boil or blood barrier build, because if you'll note that's another, I'm not going to waste your time, but look it up. Blood barrier could be used to double dip on damage over time if you want to try something like that. I have not tried that. For the amulet, we're doing Zoph's Blood. This is the highest percentage kind of that we can get from an amulet in the slot. The other stats, the enemies in your presence have minus 25 to fire resistance is also very good for us, but the plus 86 fire resistance obviously does nothing. Now, the correct choice is Defiance. Defiance of Destiny is the correct choice probably for the slot. Something with as much life as possible. This 14% is only 10% less than what we're using, and this would be another massive defensive layer for us, right? Again, this is just a little, really good one is still pretty expensive. It would take most of my funds at this point to do that, so I just haven't, and I'm pretty defensive, and the extra 10% life isn't bad, and this Zoph's Blood will cost almost nothing. So that's why we're going with that. We've got a Calm's Heart. I corrupted this, so I was able to get up to 1830 on my own without having to spend a ridiculous amount, so that was nice. We've got it socketed with the Soul Cores of Jiquani to get more percentage life. And then we've just got these 3 rings. These rings were prioritizing life, evasion rating, because armor doesn't come on rings, but we are converting evasion rating to armor, so this is a lot of flat armor, and this is an important thing. You want to go for evasion anywhere you can. So we got life, evasion rating, strength, and chaos resistance. Those are the things that we are really looking for on these rings. Potential alternatives to these rings include some examples I've got here down below. You could get up to 12% on a Grip of Kulamak of maximum life, as well as 40% armor, and things like Abyssal Wasting also applies to negative 8% of fire resistance, which are all nice things, right? Now you have to solve your chaos resistance somewhere else. And then another thing you could do is get a Black Flame, and this isn't as high as the percentage of the increased Ignite Magnitude goes, but you could get something with an Ignite Magnitude. If this was also had catalysts on it, another probably goes as high as like 72% or something like that, if I had to guess. So you could get a massive amount of Ignite Magnitude, and since we're ritualist, we could even have 3 of them or something absurd like that. Now you still want to increase your ignite and fire normal things, because this doesn't convert damage. Black Flame does not convert damage. It just makes it so that enemies take the damage as chaos damage instead of fire damage. So you don't really need to do anything on your side in order to change to use something like this. So those are other good alternatives to juiced breach rings. Next we have our gloves, which we're just maximizing for armor, life, and percentage of armor applies to elemental damage again, and strength. That Beach-born that we already talked about, that has as high a percentage reduced maximum or reduced charm effect duration as possible, and boots that of course have movement speed, armor as also applies to elemental damage and life. So that concludes the main armor. Of course, we have the Beiras. I'm using a ruby charm in order to take advantage of the fact that it's when you take fire damage, and we are, like I mentioned before, we are when we get hit, we take 5% of damage as extra, or as physical damage as fire damage, so that it triggers more often, and then triggers other things with that 1/3 chance. And then I'm using a thawing charm in order to not get frozen as much, and also trigger life. This is the least important one. Now, the little 344 life happening 1/3 of the time that either of these other two get triggered is pretty nice, and immunity to freeze all the time is pretty nice. So that's why we're doing that. And then again, we're using Laviana Spirits because our mana is nice and low, so we can do that. And then we're just using life flasks with as much life as possible. I will say life flasks become pretty not particularly useful when you have 12,000 HP. You have to kind of hit these things a couple times to have any effect on this chunk. Instead, we're going to be relying mostly on that percentage life regen that we got from our aura and our tree, our enchantment, these other, and our charm. Those are the main ways that we get life back on this build. So that kind of concludes the gearing portion of the video. Next, let's chat about skill gems. You can ignore all these up here. They were from when I was leveling. I was using Blood Boil when I was leveling. We already talked about Purity of Fire. We've got Clarity, Vitality, Herbalism, and Cannibalism attached to it. That's all free. We haven't really talked about this cast on charm use. Now, I was experimenting with other things here. Like you can put Tornado in here, for instance, and just have tornadoes triggering all the time, but they're just not that much additional damage. So instead, I've just got a setup that does Elemental Weakness, Magnified Effect, Boundless Energy, and Spell Cascade. So this is making a very large triple circle elemental weakness casting all the time. You'll see it going off constantly in the actual footage of the against enemies. Now our main thing here is Oil Barrage. Honestly, it doesn't need to be level 18. This I don't care about the level of this. It could be level 1 or the lowest level that it can be at, which I don't know off the top of my head. I have to look. But you just want... We're just using it for oil. We're not using it for damage. Now, there is an aspect of Oil Ground that says once ignited, Oil Ground adds 100% of this attack's fire damage as unscalable damage. And you could lean into that a little bit more if you want. Would be like a couple... You could get that up to a couple thousand, maybe 10,000 at probably most. Additional damage, adding to ignite damage that comes from the ignited ground, the oil ground being ignited, which would be nice. But I think it's better to lean into all of these things here. We don't have much skill speed or attack speed on this build, so we definitely want rapid attacks. The Nova projectiles is another one that I don't think is very negotiable. It's a massive deal to be able to just one-tap the entire screen with oil. Magnified Area 2 is obviously helping us do that, as well as Encroaching Ground, which makes it so that we get another 100% increased AoE over a couple seconds. And then the last one being Persistent Ground, which gives us just more duration. That's the main thing. It just lasts longer. Our oil ends up lasting quite a bit. It says 7.32 seconds here, but I don't think that takes into consideration a couple other things. I'm pretty sure... Yeah, here we go. 10.32 seconds. That's sounds a lot better. So 10 seconds of oil coverage is nice. Now, the next thing, don't worry about Lunar Assault. I used it while leveling. I was just leveling as a werewolf. I've got Flame Wall here just with Ignite, Duration, and Efficiency to make it cost less. I would put Life Tap in here too just to make it cost life. I don't use it that much. The Cross Slash ends up igniting everything just fine. Tornado, like I mentioned before, we use Tornado in order to get rid of flyers easily. It's got Magnified Area, Swift Affliction 2, Catalyzing Elements, and Drain Ailments on it. Pounce. Now this is an interesting one because we get a lot of extra DPS out of this actually. The way this works is we pounce before we cross slash. You'll see me doing this constantly in the videos. It's very defensive, but more importantly, what it allows us to do is if we use charge mark on here, cross slash activates it, which then gives us shocked ground. And when we have shocked ground, that's additional, obviously 20% additional damage, but then on top of that we've got Stormfire, which supposedly works. Everywhere I read says this interaction works, but I'm not 100% sure on it. But basically Stormfire makes it so that enemies shocked by supported skills take 20% of damage from Ignite as lightning damage, so we should be getting an extra 20% of damage from this as well, from Stormfire. And then we just have rapid attacks, and this is another big one, Holy Descent. So this gives us Consecrated Ground when we use a skill, which is 5% of maximum life and 50% reduced effective curses, which is huge. I mean, the 5% of life build with 12,000 life is obviously huge. So we have this nice area of Consecrated Ground every time we leave. Ignore Arctic Howl and the Soul Offering. Those again were just part of the leveling experience, and I've left these in here by the way so that we can meet our gem thresholds. You'll notice here at the top for those skills down here. You need over here at least 10 of each to get each of these. I can't help getting 10 blue, unfortunately. We don't want the maximum mana, but we'll live with it. And then we want also the majority to be blue just to get chill immunity, or you can try to get green to be your maximum if you'd rather have shock immunity. I'm doing the thing that I hate chill, and I hate chilled ground, so that's why I went with that. But basically that's why we left those other skills in here. So let's talk about cross slash. Cross slash is what we use to actually ignite things. It also triggers the mark, like we mentioned, from Pounce. We basically are constantly doing this combo. Chart and just Pounce in and cross slash out. That's our main bread and butter. But basically we have it on life tap so it doesn't cost mana. We have it fire attunement just to get a little bit of extra fire damage. We have Ignite 3 to help with igniting bosses, etc. Rapid attacks 2, and cooldown recovery so we can do it as often as we need to. So that concludes the gems. Again, Wolfpack is not important. We don't have spirit. We can't use any of these spirit abilities. It's just in there to meet the gem cap. So that concludes the gems.